G'day guys, welcome to another off-grid episode. This one is all about food and how to provision for extended off-grid travel.
So this is the 9th part of our off-grid series. So far in the series, we've covered off power systems, how to get water and water management, safety and security off-grid, how to get internet off-grid. It's part of a 12-part series that we've teamed up with Everything in Caravanning and Camping for. And just like all those other episodes, we are giving away a $100 voucher in this episode. Stick around to the end of the video to find out details about how you can win your own $100 voucher to jump on their marketplace and grab yourself something from there to help with your off-grid ventures. But from the last video, the winner was Pat Collins.
Congratulations, Pat. We have left you a comment on your comment, and if you could also send us a email at Simon@the-Lifestyle-Pioneers, we will send your contact details over to the team at Everything Caravan and Camping, and they will send you the voucher.
Yeah, that's Simon@the-Lifestyle-Pioneers.com. Liz forgot the .com.
Oh, sorry. As always, guys, 10% of our YouTube revenue goes towards charity. Thank you so much for watching the ads, and thank you so much to everyone who jumped on board our push-up challenge. We raised over $3,000 for Movember, which is amazing.
Which I'm pretty sure takes our total to over $15,000
so far to charity. So thank you so much. You are an absolute bunch of legends. Watching the ads makes a huge difference.
Let's dive into it, and here's our top tips on how to make your food last for an extended off-grid stay.
Tip number 1 is put those years of Tetris to good use. You really need to maximize what you can get in your fridge and freezer. This is absolutely critical. So we'll show you some of the things that we've got in here that help with those Tetris skills. So the first thing we've got, rectangular containers. These ones are the Vent Smart by Tupperware. So what they've got in that, they allow us to really load the veggies in, stack them in as high as we can, and use all the available fridge space. The other thing that we like about these particular ones is that they've got like a little code, and you can adjust how much air gets into the fruit and veggies, which maximizes the longevity of the fruit and veggies themselves, so they will stay fresh up for longer. These are bloody insane. I absolutely love them. So we've got those, and they fit perfectly on this shelf. So you can see here there's absolutely no wasted space at all. Another hot tip for getting the most out of those veggies is put a piece of paper towel in the bottom of the container to help absorb the moisture. That is my next best tip. And the third thing we have to keep veggies going for longer is, it's called a fridge friend. It's this thing here. It sits at the back. It just sticks on the back of your fridge, and it absorbs moisture. So I'll show you. This is them here, fridge friend. So basically, it's designed to absorb and attract moisture, which it 100% does, because when I look at the fridge when it needs defrosting, all the moisture is around the fridge friend, and it just helps keep your fruit and veggies fresher for longer, which is a win, which means less waste, which I'm all about. Jonathan Roberts is the owner of this company. He's an absolute legend. He's one of our patrons. He got us onto these. I'll leave a link down here if you are keen to get one. We've got a discount for you, so happy days. I love it. So back into the land of Tetris. Normally when we shop, we prioritize value, but when we're shopping for off-grid, an off-grid long-term provision, like a 30-day with no restock, we will prioritize the shape of the container. So think about things like yogurt. You can buy it in a cylinder shape or in a rectangular prism shape. We always go for the rectangles or the objects that can tessellate better, so you get absolutely no dead space in your fridge. You want to absolutely load it to the top. So we also have these collapsible silicone containers. So what it means is that when you use something, like when you first put it in here, I'll show you. When you first have the item, say this has got bacon in it. When I first bought the bacon, it's this big, but I can shrink it down and collapse it as I go. These are really awesome because they're soft, which means that when they shake around, they don't bruise anything, and you get rid of any dead and wasted space. And we often take things out of their package, their original package, and put them in a container similar to this to save space and make sure it doesn't get damaged. Moving on to the freezer, the same principles apply. You want to get as much as you possibly can, and I'm going to show you, this is what our fridge normally looks like, and then I'm going to walk you through what we would do if we were, again, planning for a long-term off-grid. So normally you've got this sort of setup, right? When you buy mince and chicken like this, it takes up a boatload of space. There's heaps of dead air space in there that you can't use. That is not ideal. So what we have is a vacuum sealer. It's just a cheap job from Aldi that we bought years and years ago. And we vacuum seal absolutely everything meat-wise. So you unpackage it, get it into a nice little 500 gram packet that you want to use for one use, vacuum seal it and lie it nice and flat. So when we have mince and things like that, we will pack it down so it's like a nice flat rectangle. It uses a lot less space packaging it like that, and it also defrosts quicker. We prioritize fitting as much meat as we possibly can in the freezer because that's going to really help you stretch out those meals. So something to consider is buying boneless cuts so you're not wasting freezer space on bones. Something else that we consider when we're going off grid is the versatility of those cuts. So things like rump steak can be used as a steak, it can be used as stir-fry meat, it can be used, in a stroganoff or something like that. So having versatile cuts as well is really going to help you out. Chicken, fish, beef, it's all universal to multiple recipes, so it gives you lots of flexibility if you need to change on the fly. Frozen peas and frozen corn are really versatile across a lot of meals that we eat, so we often have those in there as well. For us, they're the ones that we like to eat the most. They're the ones that we really think taste great, and they pack really well compared to, say, frozen broccoli, which has still got a lot of air gaps in it that you're just wasting space.
If you've been watching us for a little while, you know that coffee is an essential part of our travels and an essential part of our day. So how do we make coffee last, not so much the coffee, but the milk last for over 30 days off grid? Well, we can carry up to about 8 litres of milk in our fridge. So 8 litres is not a lot of milk over a month, but when all we use it for is coffee, we can make it last. I'll tell you more on that in a minute. But if you think 8 litres of milk spread over 32 days is 250 mils a day. That's enough for us to have a morning coffee each. We can get by with 250 mils when we're rationing it hard. So how do we make 8 litres of milk last for over 30 days? Well, as we're going through that month, obviously we're eating a lot of the meat and other veggies and things like that are in our freezer. So as soon as there's room for a 2 litre jug of milk to fit up in the freezer, we jam one in there and freeze it, and that becomes our milk for later in the month. As there's room for another one, if we haven't cracked one, I'll jam that in the freezer as well. Frozen milk, once it's defrosted, you can't tell the difference. It works a real treat. So what do we do for milk apart from coffee then, if all our fresh milk is dedicated to the life-giving substance that it is? Powdered milk. Oh, I can see you all cringing already. Powdered milk is an excellent substitute for fresh milk, particularly when it comes to things like cooking. So when we're using it for mashed potatoes, or if we're making pancake batter or any cake batters or anything like that. But as well as the kids' porridge. Now, our kids love their porridge, and oats are a great thing to carry for breakfast. They're really easy to carry, lots of oats, and by throwing in powdered milk into their porridge when we make it, it goes a really, really long way. The kids don't even notice the difference, to be honest, and I don't really notice the difference that much either. You'd be surprised when you use powdered milk in anything cooked like that. It really doesn't make too much difference, and to be honest, I would rather tolerate a bit of powdered milk on my Wheat Bix of a morning than tolerate powdered milk in my coffee. That's our priorities, that's the way we run it, but it works really, really well, and we've been easily able to do over 30 days off grid without a resupply by doing this method of powdered milk and fresh milk saved just for the special drink of a morning that is our coffee. Now, the main reason we use powdered milk over those long life milk jugs is just because of the physical space that they take up and the weight. We're carrying water anyway. We're always carrying water, obviously, for everything else that we need in the van. So rather than carrying long life milk in cartons that can only be used as milk. We carry water, which can be used for obviously a variety of things, and then when we need milk, mix it with a bit of the powder and we've got ourselves milk. We just think it works a lot better. It's a lot easier to store. We can easily store a couple of kilos of milk powder, which goes a really long way. I can't remember exactly how many litres it makes, but it makes a significant amount of milk and is a lot easier to carry than long life milk cartons.
All right, so I could tell you everything that we cook, all our favorite meals, but that's not really going to help you because, to be honest, you're still going to eat the exact same food that you eat now when you're on the road as well. So what I will share with you is how I think about planning these really long trips. And when I think about the vegetables, I think about it in sort of, there's 3 stages. You've got your really hearty, gold tick veggies, in my opinion. They're the ones that do not need to go in the refrigerator, because anything that doesn't need to be refrigerated is going to last a long time and it's going to free up that fridge space for other things. So if I'm thinking about things like pumpkins, potatoes, onions, corn, if you buy it in the corn cobs, you can keep that out of the fridge for like a week or so. Whole cabbages, things like that. If you can keep them in a cool, dry spot, you don't need to put them in the fridge. You can have them in your pantry in a nice cold spot. They last for ages and you can have them on hand. So the next best is your hearty greens. So what I mean by that is you've got your broccolinis, your zucchinis, you've got your asparagus, your Brussels sprouts. Carrots are another great one. Things that are going to last a few weeks, especially if you keep them stored correctly in those VentSmart containers. They will last weeks. We've had baby spinach it was really fresh when we got it. We've had it last for 30 days in those containers. As long as you buy it and it's fresh, it will last for ages. The other thing we found is broccolini, for some reason, lasts longer than broccoli. And zucchinis are gold. So yeah, they're our top favorite veggies to use. So think of the recipes that you might use already that have those ingredients, add those to your shopping list. A lot of these veggies too, they'll last a few days, a few weeks out of the fridge, but as soon as there's room in the fridge, like once you've eaten your way through a few things, you can transfer them into the fridge and extend their life even further. And then the last phase of that is your salads and things like that are going to need to be in the fridge. So I'm thinking things like cucumbers, tomatoes, spinach leaves, your capsicums, things like that need to be stored in containers and then popped into the fridge. And so with those 3 phases, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, my meal planning is based on the reverse of those 3 phases, so that I'll use the fresh ingredients first, then the middle, hearty ones, and then the robust ones later. So another thing to consider when you are grocery shopping is how you're buying that food. So for example, a whole pumpkin can be stored out of the fridge, but if you've bought a cut pumpkin, like a half or a quarter of a pumpkin, you're going to need to keep that in the fridge. You can also buy unrefrigerated eggs, and if you buy them unrefrigerated, you can keep them in the pantry, in the cupboard. They do not need to go into the fridge. So that can make a huge difference to how much food you can carry if you've got as much food as you possibly can in your pantry stores as well as in your fridge. So next up is my approach to meal planning. So you really need to do a good stock take of what you already have, and then make a list of the meals that you want to eat, and then create your shopping list from there. So you've got everything you need, because when you go to these really outback remote places, yes, there might be a roadhouse every now and then, but you are not guaranteed to get fresh fruit or vegetables from them, because it depends really when the road train arrives and who else has been in town. So, we found that yes, it's nice to be able to top up, but if you're looking for something in particular, you cannot rely on getting them from the roadhouses. You really do need to do all your planning, all your provisioning, and just use those as a top-up only. The way we approach the meal planning is very much, week 1 is meats and fresh salads, week 2 is the meats and then the veggies, the more hearty veggies, and week 3 is your longer life veggies. And then beyond that, we're going into the canned food. So things like, what I'm talking about is like your tuna mornays, your apricot chickens, your curried sausages. So they don't have to be boring and unhealthy. I'm just mean that they're things that don't require refrigeration, apart from the meat that you've got in that freezer because you packed it like a ninja. Another good tip that I have for meal planning is double up. So the fewer ingredients you can have, the better your life will be. if you think of meals that are simple and then repeat them throughout the month cycle, if that makes sense. So if you're having spaghetti in week 3, you might also have spaghetti in week 4 because you've got the same ingredients on hand. So throughout this series, we've always said you need to remain flexible, and having a backup supply of food on top of your planned food is going to allow you to do that. So having things on hand like noodles, pasta, pesto, tins of baked beans, things like that, they're really going to give you a lot more flexibility if you've got them as backup stores as well.
All right, so when it comes to cooking these meals, how do we go about cooking everything off grid? Obviously, your main things are going to be cooking on a fire, cooking on gas, or cooking on electric. For us these days, if you've watched our recent videos about our new caravan, we've gone to full electric, so gas is out of the question for us. Before that though, the Weber was a really, really good option for gas cooking. It's very, very versatile, and that's what we try and stick with everything we have, because we don't want to be carrying a heap of different appliances or a heap of different cooking gear for a heap of different things. Fire cooking is by far our favourite way to cook, and we do carry a camp oven and a couple of other things like a billy and that for cooking on the fire. But what we do find is there's a lot of places in the country where it's difficult to have fires because either there's fire bans, you can't get your hands on wood, or it just isn't convenient to have a fire. So although we do love to have a fire when we can to cook on, it's not convenient to have that as one of your primary ways to cook meals. Gas is a really good option, but it is still a limited resource that you have to go and replenish. So if you are going off grid for an extended period of time, you need to make sure that you've got enough of it if that's your primary cooking source to be able to last. The advantage to electric cooking, although you need to have a big battery system to be able to run things like induction cookers and thermomixers like we do, it is infinitely replenishable as long as you've got sunlight. So the advantage is that we can spend indefinite periods of time off grid. As long as the sun's shining, we can replenish it from our solar, and we don't need to go into towns or anything like that to replenish it. One of the big downsides you'll find to gas cooking, particularly if it's outside, is that it is extremely affected by the wind, and unfortunately a lot of parts of the country, it is pretty windy a lot of the time. If you've seen our interior walk around, we use a portable induction cooker. We don't have anything built into the van. We can use it here inside. We can take it outside. Our new car will have a battery system that'll be able to run it, so we can take it with us on day trips and things like that. So it's extremely versatile. It's not affected by wind, and you can use it anywhere as long as you've got sun to recharge those batteries. Next, we have our Thermomix. If you haven't seen one of these before, we use the Thermomix pretty extensively. The Thermomix is just one of those appliances, again, that's just, I think it suits caravanning and travel really, really well. If you've got a battery system that can run it, I think these are a really good option because, again, they're extremely versatile. We can do everything from porridge in the morning right through to full meals of an evening and everything in between. It'll cut, chop, blend, cook, boil. It's got scales built into it. It'll do just about anything. We use it as a kettle. We use it for so many things that it just means we can carry the one appliance and make a whole range of meals. It allows us to carry a lot more just raw ingredients and a lot fewer ingredients, and we can make our own sauces and spice mixes and things like that. For example, where we have Mexican food quite often, we can make our own taco seasoning. We don't have to go and buy those little packets of taco seasoning. So it doesn't just save us money, but it just means that we don't have to carry as many ingredients, which when space is at a premium is vital. If you are interested in these, we don't sell them, but we do have mates that do. So if you are interested in a Thermomix or want to know more, hit us up on socials, send us a DM or leave us a comment below, and we'll hook you up with the right person who can show you how cool they are. But we think they're a really good option for travelers. Just make sure you're considering, I guess, all the pros and cons to the cooking solution that you're looking at, and making sure that you've got something that's versatile, that gives you a wide range of foods that you can cook, particularly if you're going to cook, particularly if you're going to travel for an extended period of time. You don't want to be eating the same crap all the time. You want to be able to have a bit of variety in your diet and have a bit of fun with it. So yeah, anyway, that's what works for us. If you are interested in knowing a bit more about what power system we use, or if you want to know how to calculate your own power system to be able to run the power, to be able to run the appliances that you want to be able to run, jump on and watch one of the previous episodes in this series, which was all about power and power management. We actually did 2 whole episodes on it, one where we explained the principles and one where we gave you an example of what system we use and how to make it all run, and get your head around exactly what you might need to be able to do what you want to be able to do. So when it comes to really extending your grid off stay and beyond that first week or two, when your fresh fruit and veggies are starting to become a bit scarce, something that also works really well is dehydrated foods. Now there's the obvious ones like sultanas and dates and dried apricots like this, and our kids absolutely love these. I don't go so much on the dried apricots and the dates and stuff, but some of them aren't too bad. But yeah, you get a lot of dried fruits these days, dried apple, dried mango, all that sort of thing are really good for when the fresh fruit is starting to become a little bit scarce. Something else that we do is a little bit of dried veggies as well. Things like shiitake mushrooms, the Japanese shiitake mushrooms, the dried version of them. One advantage is they're super light, but the other one is obviously they last for an exceptionally long time. And now they might not be your first choice when you're going to make a meal, but when it gets to week 3 or 4, I can guarantee you some sort of fresh tasting veggie in your meals is an absolute godsend. So really recommend you look at a lot of the options out there as far as dehydrated foods. To be honest, a lot of the dehydrated veggie options are better than the canned ones, in my opinion. If you've ever had canned peas or anything like that, they're pretty ordinary. If you do have limited freezer space, though, corn kernels, I reckon, are not too bad out of a can. I reckon they taste just as good as the frozen ones. So you can be a little bit selective there about what veggies you choose to take. The problem with any tin stuff or jars as well is that it does weigh a fair bit. So if you're like us and conscious about how much your rig weighs, you probably need to be a little bit careful about how many cans and things like that you buy when it comes to things like beans and corn and things like that. And that's why we'd prefer to have the frozen stuff if we can afford the freezer space. All right, one of the last things to consider is product selection when you are going to the supermarket and buying different things, especially if you are space conscious like us and weight conscious like we touched on before. The difference between dehydrated and canned goods can be significant in the weight it takes up. Something else that we like to consider is when we're buying things, even like pasta, the difference between how much space some spaghetti takes up compared to how much, penne or your shells or something like that might take up can be significant. So that's a really good way to jam a whole lot of stuff in. I mean, half a dozen packets of spaghetti probably take up the same space as 2 packets of normal pasta. So it's worth thinking about things like that. When it comes to breakfast cereals and stuff like that, we find Weet-Bix. If you love Weet-Bix like I do, I eat Weet-Bix just about every morning. It packs really tightly and nicely compared to obviously other cereals. There's a lot of airspace in there. As we said earlier, we find oats really, really handy. We keep them in a container just to keep them fresh. But again, you can get these go a really, really long way. And if your kids are like us and love their porridge, this is a really good option. And obviously oats are handy for other things as well if you want to make some of your own snack foods and things like that. When it does come to snack foods, we find things like corn kernels or even that microwave popping corn versus buying packets of chips and things like that. It's just really dense and really easy to transport, lightweight, and then obviously you can make a good snack out of it if you do like that sort of thing. And as I said before, rather than bread and bulky stuff that's not only hard to transport, but it does take up a lot of space, we use a lot of wraps and cracker biscuits and things like that that just don't take up as much space, last a lot longer, and transport a lot better. Back to the fridge stuff, when it is come to your fridge, things like salami, I love my smoked salmon. 2 things that last ages if you get it vacuum sealed, but also, again, packs down nice and flat, hardly takes up any room, and you can save it for that later in the trip. I remember one trip when we went through outback South Australia, we got to the ruins, Cordillo Downs ruins, not too far from, about halfway between Inaminka and Birdsville. We'd been off grid at that point for over 3 weeks, and I was having smoked salmon and cream cheese and on my wrap. It was just insane. So you can still eat good food and eat healthy food without having and live off grid for a long period of time. You don't have to just do all the boring sort of canned stuff and long life meals that we probably more traditionally think about. All right, so grog. If you like your beers like me, then carrying enough beer to stay off grid for 3-4 weeks plus, you're going to be carrying quite a lot of beer. Obviously, it's heavy and it's fairly bulky as well. So you really just want to be thinking about things that you might be willing to drink that aren't beer. So I do carry a few beers with us, but I also like to carry some spirits. I'm a big fan of Spice Rums and Canadian Club and things like that, just in case you're wondering if you ever see me out there. Beers get you a little way, but the Canadian Club or a Spice Rum will get you a long way. But the main thing is, yeah, carrying those spirits is just a lot easier. You can decant them out of the glass bottles as well into other bottles just to save that weight as well and just easier to dispose of later. We carry a soda stream and some cordial to be able to mix that with. That's the way I like to drink it. I love the Budrum Ginger Cordial in the soda stream with a little bit of lime. It's bloody fantastic with the Canadian Club or with the spiced rum. Goes down an absolute treat. As much as I hate to say it, cask wine is also pretty convenient. If you don't mind the taste of cask wine, again, everything's about a compromise. If that's the compromise you're willing to make, not a bad option, again, to save that weight over the glass bottles that wine generally comes in. Do be aware, though, with alcohol as you're travelling, particularly in some of the more remote parts of the country, that a lot of the Indigenous communities out there, you can't bring alcohol in. A lot of them are dry areas as well. In the areas where you can buy alcohol, often there are restrictions as well on how much you can buy and the hours that you can buy alcohol. So the alcohol is fairly well controlled in some parts of the country, so just be aware of that. But it doesn't mean you can't have a little one every now and then. I've been sober for 43 days now, not in a row or anything, but just, 43 days since we left on the trip. So, I'm making the most of it. But, alcohol is something you do have to take into consideration pretty carefully, particularly when it comes to weight and that bulky storage that it takes up. At the end of the day, I'll eat baked beans for a very long time, but if I run out of beer or I run out of coffee, we're going back to town no matter what. So it is something worth considering and making sure you got the right supplies.
I hope you got a few tips and some ideas in there for how to extend your off-grid stay and make sure that your food lasts. Obviously, we're a family of 4, but any of that you can apply to your setup. The big one is getting the most out of your freezer space and planning from the beginning, from your shopping right through to your packing of your groceries into your setup. There's a whole lot to think about there. Let us know, though, what are your top tips for extending your off-grid stay with food? We don't know it all. We love learning from this, and we've learnt so much from this series so far from the feedback we've got from you guys. And if you leave us a comment, that's the first step in entering the competition to win yourself an Everything Caravan and Camping $100 voucher.
Yeah, so leave us a comment, subscribe to our channel, and there's a link in the description to sign up to the Everything Caravan Camping newsletter. And you're in.
Simple as that. All right, guys, as I said, hope you enjoyed this one. Plenty more coming up in the Off-Grid series as well in the coming weeks. Until then, though, we'll see you guys next Sunday.
See you Sunday.
Nobody's trying to be here.